Think so? Let's do it.
Wonderful. Make it so.
So let's talk coming of age. Stardate 41461.2. I'll get us going with a little premise and talking tropes, and then we'll break it down a little further behind the scenes and such. So, okay, what's the premise? Well, while Wesley prepares for and then takes the Starfleet Academy entrance exam, Picard and the Enterprise crew are interrogated and investigated by Admiral Quinn and Lieutenant Commander Remick. What they are searching for remains a mystery. Dun dun dun. Exactly. So genre, I'm gonna go straight up mystery. I would say thriller, but there really isn't that ticking time bomb, that ticking clock that makes a thriller a thriller. That kind of gets into the pacing. Maybe we'll talk about that. But genre, straight up mystery. What's Remick looking for? What is on this starship that's so wrong that they're tearing it apart and making everyone anxious? Tropes, we get the Starfleet jerk. I'm gonna say Remick is definitely prototype Starfleet jerk. And we get a plot twist. I'll just go ahead and say straight up what it is at the start of our episode. They investigate the Enterprise. They're tearing it apart. They're questioning every captain's log, every crewman's log. And then it's revealed that it's not that they're looking for something really negative, but they're testing to see if Picard is loyal enough to become the Commandant of Starfleet Academy. So a little bit of we weren't really investigating you. We were, what's that called when you're digging up dirt on opposition research or something like that?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's what we're getting at in this episode. And yeah, who's starting us off? Am I taking us for what works and what doesn't?
I'm going to do a little bit of the history
behind the scenes,
here.
yeah, of course.
So you're going to get a kick out of this. There's a little detail here. First of all, this is the first official episode where Maurice Hurley is fully in charge. A couple other things. The original title of this episode was called Starfleet Academy. This is the part, I think, given your affinity for parts of the ship, that you'd find interesting. There was a sort of subplot that was cut for time in this episode, and scenes were written but not filmed involving Wesley's 16th birthday, and they celebrated it on Deck 21 Forward. Yeah. So
10 forward, okay.
But Deck 21 Forward, so it's a predecessor. It's way down at the bottom of the ship, or midpoint of the ship.
Gotcha. Sorry, I think yeah, I misheard you there. So you were saying this one take place on 21 Forward.
Yep, which is the predecessor or precursor.
You're right. I do love that detail. I would want to hang out on 21 Forward.
Enterprise interiors is a big thing there, and I figured you'd enjoy that. Because Data is at a birthday party, Data starts asking people how they celebrate their birthdays. Worf gets annoyed and says Klingons don't celebrate birthdays, which kind of would set up the trope of Klingons don't do this, Klingons don't do that. And then Data asks how old he is. Worf replies he doesn't know. Worf counters with to Data about his age, and Data responds, I have no age. It's an interesting little scene, cut for time, but it's kind of interesting in terms of world building, in terms of putting things into context, into focus. Good stuff there.
Yeah, so, that is cool. I like 21 Forward a lot. Dude, you know me too well.
I had a feeling you'd enjoy it. So with that said, I think you're kicking us off here. What works about this episode? And forgive me, because of the way the camera's working, I can't see you, so I'm just gonna keep going. Yeah, I know. Can you see me?
Yeah, you good. I'm ready to go. Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so with that said, what works for you, Scholar Beta, about this episode?
So you know me, I'm always tracking themes and what I'm like to call theme seeds. Not exactly fully developed ideas on these themes, but the beginnings of them. And so, okay, one of the theme seeds I see planted here is that with these crewmen and Wesley, they're in the dark, but they're not stumbling. Actually, I don't know why I'm saying crewmen. Just the Enterprise crew, they're in the dark, but not stumbling. So this episode is all about how they work when they're in the dark, about their goals and the outcomes, right? Picard and the Enterprise on the ship versus Wesley preparing for and taking the exam. Neither are given complete information, but we get to see how they react authentically. And Wesley does pretty well. So does Picard and the crew. They remain loyal. They stand up for Picard, and they question the merits of the investigation, but are, as Starfleet officers, still helpful. And so they kind of ride that tension that occurs in the Picard Enterprise part of the episode. So I appreciate that idea. Next thing that I really like is the shuttlecraft rescue. I love this scene where Picard helps Jake Curlin So let's break down what happens exactly. So Picard's on the bridge, Remix, asking him a billion questions, taking all these notes on his pad, being really annoying. And Jake Kurland steals a shuttlecraft. And Picard, under pressure from Remix, saves Kurland, again proving he's great with kids. I don't know what Picard's thing is. You're great with teenagers too. You can teach high school, man. Anyways, you could read this incident as facing your fears and not running away from them, but I think that's too simple of a reading, a way too simple reading. And I think this connects with what you were saying about the title of the episode being about Starfleet Academy. This is all about testing your intelligence, in my opinion. And we all have gifts that schools and exams cannot evaluate. And that's what Kurland's dealing with at the beginning of the episode. Oh man, I'm not good enough for Starfleet. I'll never get in. Kind of a little foreshadowing to what's going to happen to Wesley. However, there's a piece of dialogue spoken by Geordi. I think this is key. They're trying to lock down Kurland before he can escape the Enterprise and the shuttlecraft, and he's going to go run off and join a freighter and be like a worker. He's just going to put his head down and work now that he flunked out of naval college or could never get in. And Geordi, as Kurland's overriding all the mechanisms and lockout, says, smart kid. And I feel like, I know that's like a very small thing, but to me, this shows Kurland's resourcefulness, skill, forward thinking. It's someone in Starfleet that recognizing this, but it also shows that Kurland's got a lack of a place to grow. And maybe if he would have had a different type of exam or evaluation, like this is his way of showing how intelligent he is. This guy can break into a secure hangar bay, steal a shuttlecraft, escape, and also listen to the orders of his commanding officer to save his life when he lacks experience. So anyways, my thing, I just love that scene. I love what I think it communicates about Kurland being a gifted person and being able to show his intelligence in other ways. Even though he is stealing a shuttlecraft. But Picard doesn't really reprimand him there at the end. He doesn't add an additional intense punishment on top of it. I think the life lesson kind of stood for itself, if you ask me.
Yep.
Okay, last thing I want to say that I just absolutely love about this episode is Mordock. One of my absolute favorite aliens in all of Trek and all of TNG. I love the prosthetic. I love the amphibian/reptilian look, but also contrasted with the brainy personality. That breathing, moisturizing device, whatever it is, I have no idea. He's got a really dry nose, so he constantly has to be I don't know. But I love the Mordock strategy that Wesley, introduces and drops. It's all awesome. It's all awesome. I give this character the title of child of Enterprise. The Enterprise, even though he doesn't serve on it, he's an amazing drop in TNG. I'd love to go off and watch, read the standalone novels about him. That's what I've got. That's what's really working for me. Kind of that stumbling in the dark, not really knowing what your goals are, that shuttlecraft rescue, and that awesome alien, Mordock. He's a Benzite. His name is Mordock. Yeah.
Benzite. So with that said, I had a question. I love your assessment of this character, the character who steals the shuttlecraft. I don't even remember his name.
Jake Kurland,
Jake Kurland. Do we ever see him again?
I don't
think we do.
I would rely on you for that info, but I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of demonstrates my point. But I love your analysis on him and how he didn't get into the academy. I have some notes on that too. So with that said, what doesn't work for you about this episode?
Okay, I'll be brief here. There's just one big thing, and that is that I am really annoyed with the Starfleet entrance exam. Okay, this is a utopian Navy college, I guess. You have majors, but you also are learning military strategy and military history, and you get a military rank, but sometimes you study things that you would not study in the military. So I'm just going to call it a utopian Navy college. And it appears that you need scientific knowledge, logic, eye-hand coordination, and some type of psychology role-playing simulation to get in. And I really hope in the future that we are not using standardized tests to measure this. That is the most depressing idea, that in the future, to get into an elite school, you're going to have to go into a room and take standardized tests. And I hate that idea with every fiber of my being. I know it's it's not even necessarily implied in this that it is, but I'm just, as a teacher, I look at kids sitting at a desk and I can't help think Oaks, smarter balance. I just can't. Oh, those are tests, my friend. Test kids take on computers for hours and weeks at a time that interrupt their junior year for 2 weeks. Anyways, I hope in the future that we have elite schools, but we don't have elite schools that require testing to get into. This is a post-scarcity society. I can't mention.
Mm-hmm.
So why are tests? We're sorting mechanisms, present tense, because elite institutions that we have, entrance requirements do not have the capacity to take every student on. It's a fact of scarcity. But we don't. But Star Trek is a post-scarcity society, so that is my only gripe with this episode, is that that testing aspect really gets me down. I hate that idea a lot. That's all.
You have a really good point there, and I have I interpret that a little bit differently, and I'm looking forward to sharing that.
Should I give you my pips? Okay, so my pips, I'm saying 2 solid pips and 1 outline. Therefore, this is a lieutenant commander, just like Remick. Okay, I love those themes. Love that shuttlecraft rescue in Mordock. That's definitely worth 2 solid pips. Weak entrance exam testing, solid. Or I mean, outlined pip, 2.5.
I like it. So with that in mind, I'm going to get into mine a little bit. I also am giving Lieutenant Commander to this. It's interesting that you and I are on the same wavelength there. Yeah, it's funny because a revision to the format is we don't share our notes before, so I'm so thrilled that we're on the same wavelength there. So here is my criteria for why this works. The best part about this is the world building of how Starfleet works. Now, as a person who has, between the two of us, more exposure to military stuff, several members of my in-law family are in the military. I have personal members of my family who are in the military. I approach this from a different aspect. The Academy is awesome in the sense that it's for the quote-unquote best and brightest, analogous to West Point and Annapolis at modern times. As a person who dabbled a little bit in attempting to get into Annapolis, and seeing people who went through that process, it's interesting seeing how that tradition carries over and the burden that carries. Because the argument is, if you're going to put somebody in charge of an aircraft carrier in modern times, or a starship that carries materials that could blow up entire star systems, you got to have somebody who's disciplined and fits a very specific kind of criteria. And one of the greatest criticisms about the J.J. Abrams Star Trek is that Kirk, in that timeline, in that universe, is able to get into the Academy without even registering. He just gets on a shuttlecraft, and 5 minutes later, screen time, he's in his 3rd year. So from my perspective, that's why original Trek is better than new Trek in that regard. I also like the examination of Wesley's psyche building up to the big test, the psychology test, which, if I remember correctly, this is in reference to, or I got a really strong vibe from that episode, Bread and Circuses, where Kirk's classmate from the Academy washes out because he failed to do a similar test. He failed to perform on a similar psych eval. Do you remember that, Scholar Beta?
No, not at all.
Okay, well, that's the background for his character, David Maricus. He is not able to complete his academy training because of his poor performance on the psych eval, which is very similar to what they have here in this episode. I also like the scenario. You talk about standardized tests in this, and that is true. There are standardized tests, but I get the impression, and my experience in ROTC in high school backs this up, of everything being a test, not just the sit down at a computer and take standardized tests one. Case in point, there's a cultural fluency test where where Wesley runs into a guy with the hands. Wesley quickly picks up on the fact that he needs to be aggressive to this particular species because showing courtesy is a sign of weakness in that culture. And that makes it a test. That reminded me of 2 different scenarios. When I was the Command Master Chief Petty Officer in my high school's ROTC program, Naval ROTC program, Junior Reserve. And there are 2 tests that we do. There's one that's called Mini Boot Camp, which is boot camp for the enlisted kids, but also a boot camp of a different sort for the executive staff, the officers and chief petty officers, and how everybody learns through that process. And the instructors, one of which was a command master chief, the other was a colonel and then a lieutenant commander, offer suggestions and try to enhance our command skills. And all these are scenarios built to test organization and cohesion. So I like that. But all this fails, or rather falls, into the background compared to the final scene with Wesley and Picard. I am going to say, maybe this is because we've been talking about Picard up until this point. When I saw that scene, I straight up said this is the best singular scene in Star Trek Next Generation Season 1 up until this point, where Picard shows his vulnerability and says, I didn't get into the academy the first time either, but I took it and I improved and I got in the second time. I absolutely love that. Gives a humanizing flaw to Picard and builds rapport with Wesley, where it was kind of rocky and touch and go up until that point. That's what works for me. What doesn't work is, and I'm curious what your perspective is on this, the storytelling structure falters significantly.
Yeah.
The relationship between Wes and that kid who stole the shuttle, kind of jarring. I didn't know what was going on at first. Wes going into academy testing, kids stealing the shuttle, and then you have the Inspector General of Picard's going through Picard's crew and giving this sort of Inquisition thing. A lot of points are in conflict with each other there. There's not really cohesion, and more importantly, the IG's investigation, I think, is the worst part of this, because it talks about relationships being put to the test, but and Picard discloses this to Admiral Quinn, but we don't see, there is not a single scene where it's established that there is a relationship to begin with. They don't sit back and talk about, remember that time at the academy where we met Boothby or whatever, and we pulled a fraternity prank or whatever. A scene like that would have made it perfect, but we'd rather have or double down on this Inquisition with the Inspector General character, and do that over and over and over again, which I guess serves a specific purpose. That's not developed, and it sets up an arc with conspiracy, and I know the history of conspiracy. I'm looking forward to talking about that. I think that would have had a far better payoff if you know what the character relationship is between Picard and Quinn ahead of time. Also, go ahead.
I'll grant you that. I'll absolutely grant you that there is really nothing between Quinn and Picard to test that friendship. Yeah, that I think I want to say like that's just tacked on, to make the scene in Quinn's quarters a little more dramatic, though. It's pretty flat. I love your insights in the academy. I want to add a couple things, but finish up. What else does not quite working for you?
My final thing is the plot resolution of Wesley not getting into the academy after a narrative leading everything to the contrary is unforgivable. It could have been fixed with a single line of dialogue. That's going to be a theme in these next couple episodes. A single line of dialogue could have fixed all of this, and they kind of get to that. They allude to that at the end where Murdoch says, I don't deserve this, Wesley does, but it's not clear. The cultural fluency test, Murdoch saying, I couldn't have done that. Wesley going out of his way to help Murdoch in one of the computerized tests. All of this builds up a narrative that says Wesley's got this in the bag, but Wesley can't have it in the bag because if he did, he'd have to leave the show. So if they did a thing, if they had one line of dialogue saying, Murdoch scored half a point higher here or there or whatever, that would have made it clearer. So that's my deal. Yeah. What are your closing thoughts on this, Scholar Beta?
Okay, so I really do appreciate you giving me a little more perspective on kind of how you see it as a military, Starfleet as a military college. So thank you for that. I do like that. And I do want to say that, I think the psych test is the most interesting. It's standard insofar as everyone takes it, but it's completely personalized insofar as it's about your psyche, which is kind of creepy that they are able to put that test together before you become a member of this institution. However, I understand. I am not against elite quality schools. I'm against elite schools and tests that sort people out of those. Elite as an exclusive, you know what I'm saying? And I don't see a place for, I see a place for a school with requirements for like engineering. Absolutely. I do not see a place where generally to get into Starfleet, though, it is standardized knowledge. I feel like there's so many resources that anyone who would want to begin their journey potentially could. And so I'm on for the psych test, but I'm very skeptical of the other of the other scenes that take place where they're sitting at the computer.
Right.
It's too reminiscent of what's going on right now. You know what I'm
So,
saying?
totally hear you on that. You don't question that in a military like setting. It's just you do it. And I
Yeah.
definitely see the other perspective on that.
Okay, one more question for you. What do you think
Yes,
would have
sir.
happened if, do you think it would be better if Wesley failed the psych test? Do you think that would have made a better resolution and made it more acceptable? Because then would have had a little more similarity with Picard because
Yeah.
they both
Yeah.
failed something.
Exactly. I would have liked that a lot if they had brought up something similar to that, to the circumstances. And I guess they tried doing this because he makes reference to his father's death, and he draws parallels at the end of the test to Picard. I think that's really great because he says, just like what Captain Picard did and then his voice trails off. I think that's what they were getting at there.
Yeah.
And if he had failed that, I think that would have done wonders for his character, examining his psyche and given him a bigger obstacle to overcome. And that kind of deflates the whole Wonderkin stereotype that Wesley Crusher has, where he can never fail at anything. I would have loved that. That's the one slight revision there. I love that. I think that would have been a great addition there.
One more cherry on top. One second. One more cherry on top would be make it a scenario that's reminiscent of Jack Crusher's death, but we don't know yet. That will come up later.
I think that's what they were going for, though.
I know, but I want the Easter egg planted and then revealed in canon.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's keep going. What's your TrekWork, my friend? Let's break to the next part before we get too off the rails.
So let's talk TrekWork real quick. So here's the scenario. You're at Starfleet Academy. Who is your advisor and what's your major? Now, I've given this a lot of thought because I have very little to do anywhere else because of the pandemic. I was thinking command, but then I decided to change things up. And because of my affinity for time travel, I told the student recently that I've been trying to solve time travel forever. I'd love to do temporal mechanics instead of command, and I'd love Data to be my advisor. That's my dream scenario. What would be yours, Scholar Beta?
You took my advisor, my friend. No, I'm just I like what if we were competing temporal majors? However, my advisor was Spock.
Oh, that's even better.
but I get Zachary Quinto Spock, so I'm at a slight disadvantage. I love you, Zachary Quinto, but I get Zachary Quinto Spock, who has somehow fallen out of the Kelvin timeline. Anyways, okay, can I hit us up with some matte paintings? Is it cool?
Yeah, make it so, buddy.
Okay, my friends, we have matte paintings. Before there was CGI in Picard, there were matte paintings, and we have Relva 7, the location of Wesley's Starfleet Academy entrance exam, and then there's a hallway. Inside the exam building. That's where the encounter that you talked about, where Wesley identified the guy with the webbed hand, goes down. That is a great scene. You're absolutely right about that. That is a great scene. And then, okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Captain. What type of shuttlecraft did Mr. Curlin steal? Do you know?
Oh boy.
You can do it, my friend.
In terms of class?
No, they don't say. They don't say. Yeah, it's a number. Type what?
Oh, I don't know. Funny you bring that up because during that time I was actually cooking Hasprat. I have a recipe for Hasprat and Klingon blood pie, and I was making those while that episode was going. So you got me. What type of ship is it?
You have permission to put me on the spot and ask me a completely meaningless trivial factoid, but it's a Type 7, and that's our Enterprise interior. Technically not the Enterprise, but a shuttlecraft on the Enterprise. Well, outside when Curlin steals it. Here he is, Mr. Curlin, in a Type 7 shuttlecraft. There's the interior. Pretty minimal, my friends. First shuttlecraft interior we're going to get in TNG. It's awesome. It's amazing. And now it's safely back in the main shuttle bay.
Awesome. So are we ready to set up for Heart of Glory?
I think so, my friend.
Greetings, everyone. Captain Kanaka here. On behalf of all the educators at Teachers Talking Trek, I hope you enjoyed our little video here. As always, please let us know what you think in the comments. So with that said, live long and prosper, e malama pono, and see you next time.